0600 hours, eastern approach to the Singapore Strait. A heavy gray mist hangs over the water, obscuring the horizon where the Pacific meets the narrow channel. The sea is eerily calm, the glass-like surface broken only by the wake of a massive Allied container ship pushing westward. On the bridge, the crew watches the radar screens with weary eyes while drinking stale coffee. The humidity is oppressive, clinging to the steel railings and fogging the thick glass windows. It feels too quiet for one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. The usual chatter of commercial radio traffic is absent, replaced by a suffocating static. The radio cracks to life with a harsh, metallic command in broken English. A shadow emerges from the fog bank 2 miles ahead. It is not a fishing boat. The sharp, angular silhouette of a Chinese destroyer cuts through the mist like a knife. Its gun turrets rotate slowly, mechanical gears whining as they lock onto the unarmed merchant vessel. The massive warship sits directly in the center of the navigation channel, blocking the path. The destroyer's main deck gun flashes. A warning shot screams across the bow of the container ship, sending a geyser of white water high into the air. The merchant captain yells orders to reverse engines, but the massive vessel carries too much momentum. The ship drifts forward, unable to halt its slide. The Chinese warship does not wait for compliance. The deck gun roars again. This time, the aim is lethal. The high-explosive shell slams into the container stack on the forward deck. Steel rips apart like paper. An explosion thunders across the water, hurling burning metal and cargo into the sea. Fire instantly engulfs the forward section. The shockwave shatters the bridge windows, spraying jagged glass over the crew. Black smoke billows up, choking the morning sky. Another shell impacts the hull near the waterline. The metal groans and buckles under the percussive force. Water rushes into the forward hold with the force of a freight train, dragging the bow down. On the deck, sailors scramble over twisted railings, slipping on a mixture of oil and seawater. The fire spreads rapidly, fed by the contents of the ruptured containers. The destroyer closes the distance, its heavy machine guns now raking the superstructure. Heavy caliber bullets punch through the steel walls of the bridge. Sparks fly as navigation consoles explode. The merchant captain, bleeding from a deep glass cut on his forehead, scrambles across the floor. He grabs the distress radio. He screams a mayday on the emergency military frequency, broadcasting the coordinates of the attack. He orders the crew to abandon ship. On the Chinese destroyer, the commander watches the destruction through binoculars and orders his communications officer to jam all outgoing signals. But the message has already escaped the kill zone. The container ship lifts heavily to the port side, groaning in its death throes. Burning debris litters the entrance to the strait, creating a wall of fire on the water. The blockade is live. The first casualty is sinking. Wait 30 hours, Andaman Sea. The massive steel hull of the U.S. aircraft carrier smashes through high waves, kicking up sheets of salt spray. On the flight deck, ground crews in colored vests sprint between loaded fighter jets. The deafening roar of jet engines drowns out the howling wind. Heat waves shimmer off the black asphalt. Flanking the carrier, 3 U.S. destroyers and a cruiser cut through the water in a defensive wedge formation. Their radars spin rapidly, scanning the gray sky. The air smells of exhaust and ozone. Inside the combat information center of the lead destroyer, a tactical officer slams his hand on the console. Vampire! Vampire! Inbound missiles! Multiple contacts! The horizon to the east lights up. Low over the water, white smoke trails streak toward the fleet. A squadron of enemy bombers, unseen over the curvature of the earth, has unleashed a saturation strike. Dozens of anti-ship missiles skim the wave tops at supersonic speed. The U.S. fleet erupts in defensive fire. On the bows of the destroyers, vertical launch hatches burst open. Interceptor missiles shoot skyward on pillars of flame. They arch over, accelerating to meet the incoming threat. The sky turns into a chaotic web of smoke and fire. Interceptors collide with the enemy missiles. Explosions blossom like orange flowers against the gray clouds. Shockwaves ripple across the water. Shrapnel rains down, pinging off the steel hulls of the American ships. But the volley is too thick. 4 enemy missiles break through the outer perimeter. They weave and drop altitude, locking onto the lead cruiser. The cruiser's rotary cannon spins up. It unleashes a wall of tungsten rounds with a sound like a giant canvas tearing. The lead enemy missile disintegrates under the hail of bullets. The second explodes dangerously close, spraying the cruiser's bridge with hot metal fragments. The third missile strikes home. It slams into the starboard side of the cruiser, just above the waterline. The warhead detonates. The explosion rips a 20-foot hole in the steel plating. A fireball engulfs the midsection of the ship. The vessel shudders violently, throwing sailors across the deck. Black smoke instantly chokes the air. "Hard to port!" the captain yells. The cruiser lists heavily. Damage control teams rush forward, dragging heavy fire hoses into the inferno. The remaining ships tighten their formation, their guns still tracking the smoke, waiting for the next wave. 1,000 hours, deep waters off the coast of Sumatra. Darkness presses against the black steel hull of the U.S. attack submarine. 400 feet down, the ocean is a crushing silent void. Inside the command center, the air is recycled and cool. Crew members hunch over glowing green sonar screens, listening to the ocean's heartbeat through headphones. The only sound is the low hum of the nuclear reactor driving the propeller. The vessel glides through a deep trench, using the thermal layers to hide its acoustic signature. A sharp spike breaks the rhythm on the waterfall display. The sonar operator snaps his head up. Transient bearing 090. A hidden enemy, hunter-killer. Submarine detaches itself from the canyon wall where it lay in wait. The sound of compressed air venting screams through the water. Torpedo tube doors slam open. Launch detected, the operator yells. 2 enemy heavy torpedoes accelerate from the darkness. Their propellers churn the water into a frothy wake as they acquire the American signal. Dive! Emergency deep! The U.S. captain commands. Release countermeasures! The deck angles sharply downward. The submarine drops like a stone. Loose pens and clipboards slide off tables. The hull groans under the increasing pressure, the steel ribs contracting with loud pops. From the stern, a canister shoots out. It begins to bubble and shriek, mimicking the sound of the ship's engine. The first enemy torpedo takes the bait. It swerves away from the U.S. sub and chases the decoy. It slams into the rocky trench wall, detonating in a cloud of silt and shockwaves. The second torpedo ignores the lure. It keeps coming. Its sonar ping accelerates, ping, 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 closing the distance. Fire tube 1, the captain shouts. The U.S. submarine shudders as a heavy torpedo shoots from the bow. It trails a guidance wire, racing toward the enemy launch point. The incoming enemy weapon screams past the U.S. sub's conning tower, missing by mere feet. The turbulence shakes the vessel violently, throwing the crew against their consoles. The American torpedo finds its target. It slams into the midsection of the enemy hunter-killer. The warhead triggers. A massive bubble of superheated gas expands instantly, crushing the enemy hull inward. The steel plates rip open. The ocean rushes in with the force of a hydraulic press. The enemy sub implodes, its structure failing catastrophically. Debris and oil shoot toward the surface, while the twisted wreckage spirals down into the abyss. The U.S. captain levels the plane. The sonar screen clears. The hunter is dead. 1,200 hours, altitude 20,000 feet above the Malacca Strait. The midday sun blazes against the plexiglass canopy of the lead U.S. fighter jet. Below, the narrow strip of turquoise water separates the dense jungles of Malaysia from Sumatra. White cumulus clouds drift lazily over the green islands. The pilot checks his heads-up display. The radar sweep is clean, a monotonous green line. The only sound is the steady hiss of the oxygen system and the dull roar of the single engine behind the cockpit. The radar warning receiver shrieks. 4 red triangles flash onto the tactical display. They are climbing fast from the north. Bandits, 12 o'clock high, the wingman calls over the radio. The enemy formation breaks cloud cover. Sleek twin-engine enemy fighters dive toward the defenseless supply ships below. Their weapon bays open. The U.S. pilot slams the throttle forward. The afterburner ignites with a blue flash. The jet surges, pinning him to the ejection seat. He banks hard right, cutting off the lead enemy aircraft. The enemy fighter releases a heat-seeking missile at a frigate below. The U.S. pilot thumbs the weapon select switch. Fox 2! The Sidewinder missile tears off the rail. It streaks across the sky, leaving a distinct white smoke trail. It intercepts the enemy missile mid-air, detonating it in a cloud of shrapnel before it reaches the ship. The U.S. jet merges with the enemy squadron. It becomes a chaotic swirl of gray metal and G-forces. The enemy fighter pulls a tight turn, trying to get behind the American. The U.S. pilot yanks the stick back. The G-suit squeezes his legs as the plane goes vertical. He deploys flares. Bright magnesium balls burn hot, confusing the enemy sensors. The U.S. pilot kicks the rudder and reverses his turn. The nose of his jet drifts across the enemy's tail. The cannon reticle locks on. He squeezes the trigger. The 20mm rotary cannon vibrates the entire airframe. Tracers sow a line of destruction across the enemy fuselage. Fuel ignites. The enemy engine explodes. The right wing shears off. The enemy fighter spins uncontrollably toward the jungle canopy below. The enemy pilot ejects. The canopy blows off, followed by the rocket-propelled seat. The parachute blooms white against the green trees. The remaining enemy jets break off their attack. They turn north, fleeing the engagement on full afterburner. The U.S. squadron reforms in a combat spread, patrolling the airspace. Smoke rises from the jungle floor where the enemy plane impacted. The convoy below pushes forward, safe for now. 1,400 hours. Central Malacca Strait. The channel narrows, squeezing the opposing fleets closer together. On the horizon, the dark silhouettes of the enemy surface action group cut a jagged line against the heat haze. The water is choppy, churned up by the wake of heavy displacement hulls. Aboard the lead U.S. destroyer, the tactical display is a clutter of red hostile symbols. The silence on the bridge is heavy, broken only by the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic ping of the fire control radar. The horizon flashes. White smoke plumes erupt from the enemy ships. They launch a coordinated salvo. 12 anti-ship missiles streak into the sky, level out, and accelerate to supersonic speeds, skimming just feet above the waves. "Inbound! Brace for impact!" the tactical officer yells. The deck of the U.S. destroyer vibrates. Vertical launch system hatches blow open. Interceptor missiles roar out of their cells on pillars of fire. They arc over the fleet, seeking the heat signatures of the incoming threat. The sky becomes a chaotic web of smoke trails. The interceptors collide with the enemy volley. Explosions thunder across the water, vaporizing the missiles in midair. One enemy missile survives the gauntlet. It weaves through the debris field, locking onto an Allied frigate on the port flank. The frigate's rotary cannon spins up, spitting a wall of tungsten tracers. It shreds the missile's casing, but the momentum carries the warhead forward. It slams into the frigate's helicopter hangar. The explosion tears the stern of the ship apart. Steel plating rips like wet cardboard. Aviation fuel ignites instantly, sending a fireball rolling up the superstructure. Sailors on the rear deck are hurled into the sea by the shockwave. The ship lists violently to the side. "All ships, free fire!" the U.S. Commodore barks over the battle network. The U.S. destroyers retaliate. Their deck launchers angle outward. Heavy anti-ship missiles blast from the tubes. They drop low, hiding in the radar shadow of the waves. They close the distance in seconds. The lead enemy destroyer fires its defensive flares, but the American weapons are relentless. The first missile punches through the enemy's bow armor. It detonates deep inside the hull. The force lifts the front of the massive warship out of the water. The second missile strikes the bridge tower. Glass and steel shatter outward. The command center is obliterated. The enemy formation breaks. Their lead ship burns fiercely, drifting dead in the water, blocking the path of the vessels behind it. Black smoke pours from the shattered hull, darkening the afternoon sun. The exchange is over. The way forward is open, but the cost is rising. 1630 hours, rocky islet overlooking the western channel. The late afternoon sun casts long, dark shadows over the jagged granite cliffs. Seabirds circle the peaks, riding the thermal currents above the dense tropical scrub. Hidden beneath heavy camouflage netting near the cliff edge, an enemy mobile missile battery sits silent. Its radar dish rotates slowly, scanning the horizon for the Allied fleet. The crew sits in the shade of the heavy truck, smoking cigarettes and watching the empty ocean. The air is still, smelling of salt spray and heated pine needles. A low thumping sound vibrates the air. It grows louder, turning into a rhythmic pounding that shakes the dust from the rocks. The enemy commander shouts a warning. He points to the south. Two dark shapes rise rapidly over the crest of the cliff. Two U.S. transport aircraft tilt their massive rotors backward. They flare violently, hovering just feet above the uneven ground. Dust and loose stones whip into a blinding cloud. The rear ramps drop with a heavy clang. A squad of U.S. Marines charges out. They fan out across the rocks, weapons raised. The enemy crew scrambles for their assault rifles. "Contact front!" a Marine yells. The firefight erupts at point-blank range. Bullets chip the granite, sending stone fragments flying like shrapnel. A Marine machine gunner drops to a prone position behind a boulder. He opens fire. The belt-fed weapon roars, suppressing the enemy soldiers near the truck. Brass casings spin into the dirt. An enemy soldier pops up from behind a crate. He throws a hand grenade. It bounces on the hard rock and detonates. The blast throws two Marines backward, peppering their flak vests with steel fragments. They scramble back to cover, dragging their boots through the shale. The Marine squad leader signals to the flank. A Marine shoulders a shoulder-fired rocket launcher. He sights the massive missile truck through the optic. He yells, "Backblast area clear!" He pulls the trigger. The rocket leaves the tube with a sharp crack and a whoosh of flame. It streaks across the 50-yard gap. The warhead slams into the fuel tank of the missile battery. The explosion is deafening. A ball of orange fire rolls upward, engulfing the truck and the loaded missiles on its back. The ordnance cooks off. Secondary explosions rip the vehicle apart, hurling burning tires and twisted metal over the cliff edge and into the sea below. The remaining enemy soldiers surrender, dropping their weapons on the ground. The Marines secure the perimeter, checking the burning wreckage. The threat to the fleet's flank is neutralized. Black smoke marks the island against the setting sun. 2,000 hours, the Narrows. Pitch black darkness blankets the strait. The moon is hidden behind heavy storm clouds, turning the ocean into an ink-black void. The U.S. fleet and the convoy run without lights. Their hulls cut silently through the water, invisible to the naked eye. On the bridge wings, lookouts scan the darkness with night vision goggles. The water glows green in their lenses. The only sound is the hiss of the bow waves and the low thrum of engines pushing at flank speed. The radar screens are cluttered with the static of the nearby coastline. A flurry of small contacts breaks away from the shore. They move erratically, weaving through the waves like a swarm of angry wasps. "Small boat attack, port side!" the lookout screams. Suddenly, the night tears open. An illumination round fires from a U.S. destroyer. It hangs in the sky, shedding a stark, flickering white light over the water. Below, 20 enemy fast attack craft sprint toward the convoy. Their wakes streak white across the dark water. They are small, fast, and loaded with explosives. The silence shatters. Heavy machine guns on the U.S. ships open fire. Chains of red tracer rounds lash out into the darkness. They churn the water around the approaching swarm. The lead enemy boat takes a direct hit. The 25-meter rounds walk up the hull, shredding the fiberglass. The fuel tank ignites. The boat disintegrates in a brilliant orange fireball that illuminates the terrified faces of the sailors on the cargo ships. The swarm presses closer. Enemy sailors on the fast boats fire rocket-propelled grenades. A rocket streaks across the water and slams into the hull of a supply ship. It detonates against the steel plating, scorching the paint and shaking the vessel. "Engage close-in defense," the U.S. captain orders. Attack helicopters peel off from the destroyer decks. They swoop down low, their rotors chopping the humid air. The door gunners open up with miniguns. The high-speed barrels spin with a buzzsaw roar. A wall of lead rains down on the enemy boats. One enemy craft breaches the perimeter. It races toward the flagship destroyer, aiming for the rudder. The rear sentries open fire with 50-caliber machine guns. The heavy bullets punch massive holes in the approaching boat. The enemy driver collapses over the wheel. The boat swerves violently, capsizes, and tumbles into the destroyer's wake. It explodes underwater, sending a geyser of water and debris crashing onto the rear deck. The remaining enemy boats turn and flee back toward the coast, disappearing into the shadows of the shoreline. The convoy pushes through the field of burning wreckage. Patches of oil burn on the surface, casting eerie shadows on the passing hulls. The ambush has failed. 2200 hours, northern exit of the strait. The fleet moves under a canopy of stars, finally free of the narrow coastal choke points. The ocean swell increases, lifting and dropping the bows of the weary ships. On the decks, sailors clear spent brass casings from the earlier battles. The air is cooler now, but the smell of ozone and burnt propellant lingers. Inside the combat information center of the flagship, the electronic warfare officer watches a strange anomaly on the sensors. It is not a single blip. It looks like a cloud moving against the wind. The low buzzing sound arrives first. It permeates the steel hulls, sounding like a massive hive of angry hornets. The cloud on the radar resolves into distinct contacts. Hundreds of them. "Swarm inbound, bearing 180, the officer shouts. The sky to the south fills with blinking red lights. A massive wave of suicide drones descends upon the fleet. They are small, cheap, and packed with explosives. They dive in uncoordinated, chaotic patterns, overwhelming the targeting computers. The fleet's defenses erupt. The automated Gatling guns on the destroyers spin up. They unleash a continuous, deafening roar, brrrt, that vibrates the sailors' teeth. Streams of tungsten rounds tear into the night sky. They create a wall of lead. The lead drones fly into the barrage. They disintegrate. Plastic wings and lithium batteries rain down onto the ocean. But there are too many. The swarm splits. Drones dive from all angles. "Jamming active, high power," the captain orders. Invisible waves of electronic noise blast from the ship's antennas. A dozen drones lose their connection. They veer off course, tumbling harmlessly into the waves. Others are shielded. They keep coming. One drone slips past the wall of fire. It dives steeply toward the bridge of the rear destroyer. A sailor on the wing mounts a machine gun. He fires wildly. The drone's wing shatters. It spins off axis, missing the bridge but slams into the radar mast. The explosion is sharp and bright. Shrapnel sprays the upper deck. The radar dish shears off and crashes onto the steel plating below. Sparks shower down on the crew. Another drone targets the flight deck of the carrier. It screams down. The close-in weapon system tracks it. The gun fires a short, brutal burst. The drone explodes 50 feet above the deck. Burning fuel and debris splash across the parked jets. Fire crews sprint forward, spraying foam on the burning wreckage before it can ignite the aircraft fuel tanks. The guns fall silent. The buzzing fades. The sky is empty again. The smell of burning plastic chokes the night air. The swarm is broken, but the fleet is battered, blind in one sector, and ammunition is critically low. 0200 hours, day 2, northern exit of the Malacca Strait. The narrow channel finally widens into the open Indian Ocean. The sea is rougher here, lifting the bow of the lead U.S. destroyer high into the air, before slamming it back down into the troughs. Rain squalls sweep across the deck, washing away the soot from the previous battles. Inside the bridge, the red tactical lighting casts deep shadows on the exhausted faces of the crew. The radar screen shows one final massive contact stationary in the deep water channel. The horizon lights up with a blinding flash. A split second later, a massive geyser of water erupts just 10 yards off the port bow. The ship shudders violently from the hydraulic shock. Muzzle flash, bearing 000, the lookout screams. A Chinese heavy cruiser sits broadside, blocking the escape route. Its massive 130mm main guns rotate, tracking the American ship. It fires again. The shell screams in. It slams into the forward deck of the U.S. destroyer, just ahead of the bridge. The explosion shears through the steel plating. The blast wave blows out the bridge windows, showering the command crew with tempered glass. Shrapnel shreds the radar consoles. "All ahead flank, close the distance!" the U.S. captain yells, wiping blood from his cheek. "We have to clear the lane!" The destroyer surges forward, the engines scream at maximum RPM. The ship cuts a sharp angle, narrowing its profile. The forward 5-inch gun swings into action. It fires rapidly, boom, 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 ejecting hot brass casings onto the wet deck. The American shells strike the Chinese cruiser. The first round bounces off the thick armor belt. The second smashes into the superstructure. A fire erupts near the enemy smokestack. The two ships close to within 2 miles, trading blows like heavyweight boxers. The enemy cruiser fires a salvo of heavy torpedoes. They splash into the water, their propellers churning a deadly wake. "Hard to starboard," the helmsman spins the wheel. The U.S. destroyer heels over sharply. The deck tilts at a precarious angle. Loose equipment slides across the bridge. The enemy torpedoes streak past the port side, missing by mere inches. The wake turbulence rattles the hull. "Fire port torpedoes!" The U.S. weapons officer slams the button. 3 torpedoes shoot from the deck tubes. They hit the water and accelerate. The range is point blank. There is no time for the enemy to evade. The first torpedo impacts the Chinese cruiser amidships. The explosion lifts the 12,000-ton vessel out of the water. The back of the ship breaks with a sound like a gunshot cracking the sky. The keel snaps. The second torpedo hits the ammunition magazine. The resulting explosion vaporizes the entire front section of the enemy ship. A tower of fire shoots 1,000 feet into the night sky, turning the ocean's surface bright orange. Debris rains down for miles. The enemy ship splits in two and begins to slide rapidly beneath the waves. The U.S. destroyer slows, its hull battered and smoking. The burning wreckage of the enemy blockade drifts clear of the channel. Behind the warship, the convoy of supply vessels pushes through the gap, entering the safety of the open ocean. The strait is open.